The loss of a child goes against the grain and the natural flow of life. The loss also brings the loss of hopes and dreams and unfulfilled potential, and a lifetime of grief and a sadness that just won't go away. Today, myself and Michael have gone to lunch at a pub in Leicester. This pub is not just any old pub though. This pub was the last piece of the jigsaw that convicted a monster for murder and rape. And it seems to be forgotten, but without this pub there would be no results. We begin our journey in the little Leicestershire village of Narborough. It's a close-knit community where everyone knows everyone and everyone looks out for each other. It's just like a normal village, with people going about their daily business, visiting the shops, the pub or the train station. But it wasn't like this in 1983, when the village was in shock when they heard that a local teenager had been murdered and raped on the black pad footpath nearby. Things like that just don't happen in a village like Narborough. We go back to 1983 and the young lady in the photograph is 15-year-old Linda Mann. She lives on the coppice with her mum, stepdad and 2 sisters. She's a typical teenage girl, into music, hair, makeup and making her own clothes. She earns a little extra cash by doing a couple of babysitting jobs. Linda had a couple of babysitting jobs booked in on Monday the 21st of November, and she'd already completed one and was due to go to another, but when she got to the door she was told she was not needed because they were on sick leave. So Linda popped home to tell her sister she was going to go out and visit a couple of friends. One to pay her catalogue instalment for the donkey jacket that she was wearing, and to visit another friend to collect a record that she'd lent her. She told her sister she'd be back by 10 p.m. Unbeknown to Linda, there was someone lurking in the shadows, waiting for her to walk by. 10 p.m. came and went, and Linda's mum and stepdad had arrived back from being out for the evening to be told by their daughter that their sister wasn't home. It's every mum's nightmare when their child doesn't come home when they say they're going to. On this occasion, that nightmare was to be very real. The next morning, a porter was on his bicycle on the way to Carlton Hayes Hospital. When he found Linda's body, he ran for help onto Forest Road. Linda was half naked. She had been raped and strangled to death. Time passed by and frustrations grew. The police had little or no leads. They only knew that the killer had a certain blood type and that he was 10% of the male population. Linda's mum and stepdad grew tired and wanted to lay Linda's body to rest, so her funeral was arranged.
It is with sadness that we are at the resting place of Linda Mann, a young lady taken away from her family way too soon, someone who had everything to live for and never could have envisaged her life would be taken, especially in such a tragic way, with devastating consequences. A family left to mourn the loss of a daughter who was greatly loved by all who knew her. Rest in peace, Linda.
In Littlethorpe, a village just a stone's throw away from Narborough, a baker called Colin Pitchfork had purchased a new house on Haybarn Close with his wife and his newly born little boy. He worked at a bakery in Leicester, and his boss said he was a good timekeeper and a good worker, but some of the ladies there said he was a bit creepy and couldn't keep his hands to himself. He was known to have affairs and to be a little bit strange in the bedroom department. But that wasn't all. He was known to the police for being a flasher, and he had been treated at Carlton Hayes Psychiatric Hospital. He seemed a little bit obsessed with sex, and on the night of Linda's murder, he'd got his baby boy, which gave him the perfect alibi. Or did it? A young 16-year-old trainee hairdresser was out in Wigston, and she was kissing her boyfriend goodnight for the evening before making her way home. Unbeknown to her, someone was watching her. She took a bit of a shortcut down Kirkdale Road and over the railway bridge at South Wigston. When she got to the centre of the bridge, she noticed down at the bottom by the railings there was a man that was acting a little bit strange, circling and pacing. When she got to the bottom of the railings and she passed this man, he attacked her. He grabbed her around the throat and held a screwdriver to her neck. He dragged her down the side of a couple of houses. She started to scream, but was told to shut up else he would kill her. He dragged her to a row of garages, where he shoved her inside one. He started to fumble with the zip on her jeans, but she whimpered and shoved his hand away. He said, "You do it then." She stepped backwards and tumbled onto the floor. His words were, "You'll have to suck it now, won't you?" Out of fear, she was made to orally pleasure this man. And afterwards he turned around and left. His last words were, "If you tell anyone, I'll come and find you." The hairdresser made it home and was worried about telling anybody, but the next morning she told her manager at the hairdressers, who later called the police.
We now visit Enderby, where 15-year-old Dawn Ashworth lived with her family on Mill Lane. She was a blossoming teenager, into the latest fashion, hair and music. She attended Lutterworth Grammar School, the same as Linda Mann. Dawn worked at the local newsagents where she was working that day. When she finished work, she planned to go and see a couple of friends in Narborough. She left home to telling her mum she would be back by 7 and cut across £10 Lane towards King Edward Avenue. She visited both her friends' houses, but when she got there, they were out. Dawn decided against going to find her friends in the village, and because she had told her mum that she would be home by 7 PM, she started to make her way home across the road to the entrance of £10 Lane. Unbeknown to Dawn, someone had already spotted her and parked his motorcycle nearby and began to follow her. It should have took Dawn around 15 minutes to get home from here. She was walking at a quick pace, which meant whoever was following her struggled to keep up with her for a start. That person had to jog past Dawn to get in front of her. She reached the gateway. Did she panic and run through it? Or was she shoved into it? I guess we'll never know. Dawn never made it home that evening, and her parents became frantic with worry, and they called the police. A search for Dawn was conducted over the next couple of days. A dog walker was the unfortunate person to find Dawn's body. She had been brutally raped and strangled to death and hidden under leaves and foliage.
Police now believe they were on the hunt for a serial killer, and that the man that murdered Linda Mann also murdered Dawn Ashworth. Mobile incident units were put up, and police called forward any witnesses that had any information on Dawn's disappearance that day. Different reports came in, but one was noted of a motorcycle that was reported quite a few times being seen in the area under the motorway bridge on the afternoon of Dawn's disappearance. Colin Pitchfork was out buying icing for a cake he was decorating on his motorcycle that afternoon. But it was one particular person that brought about attention on himself to the police. And that was Richard Buckland, a 17-year-old lad with learning difficulties, who lived near the Fox Hunter roundabout in Enderby, and also owned a motorcycle. He had been making himself a nuisance while the police were searching for Dawn's body, and he seemed to know details about Dawn's murder that hadn't been made public. The police became very suspicious of Richard Buckland, and in turn decided to arrest him and take him to Wigston Police Station for questioning. Richard Buckland, under interrogation, admitted to the murder of Dawn Ashworth and then retracted his confession. The things Richard Buckland said on tape were really quite disturbing, and the police had no choice but to charge him with the murder of Dawn Ashworth. Richard Buckland was charged with the murder of Dawn Ashworth on August the 10th, 1986. But he completely denied having anything to do with the murder of Linda Mann. Mr. and Mrs. Ashworth could finally now gain some peace, knowing that the murderer of their daughter was finally behind bars for good. Dawn's funeral was arranged. I remember yesterdays and love throughout the years. Lost in thought, I sometimes find I'm smiling through my tears. There are days my smile seems to be lost, and I don't know what to do. That's the time for memories, and yesterdays, and you. You always seem to bring a smile, to dry the tears I cry, when I remember yesterdays and the years that have gone by. Our years together may have gone, our yesterdays are past. But you're alive in memory, and memories can last. Rest in peace, Dawn. Fly high. Detective Chief Superintendent Baker just couldn't come to terms with the fact that Richard Buckland hadn't murdered Linda Mann. And upon reading the Leicester Mercury, he came across an article about a professor at Leicester University that had made a discovery. Professor Alec Jeffreys had discovered that human DNA carried a unique fingerprint which could actually be used to pinpoint an individual from blood or a semen sample. And this process was recently used in a court case associated with paternity. Detective Chief Superintendent Baker wondered if this process could somehow help in determining whether Richard Buckland was indeed the murderer of Linda Mann as well as Dawn Ashworth. He approached Professor Alec Jeffreys at Leicester University and in turn supplied him with samples from both victims and from Richard Buckland. This gave them a DNA profile of the murderer of both Linda Mann and Dawn Ashworth. The results shown that they were murdered by the same person. The problem was, that wasn't Richard Buckland.
The police were taken by surprise at first and refused to believe what they were hearing. The test, devised by Alec Jeffreys, was replicated and then ran a third time. After 3 months in prison, Richard Buckland was released, a free and innocent man. The police were now very aware they had a serial killer out there, one who could strike again at any time. In December 1986, a reconstruction of Dawn's last movements was aired on Crime Watch, in hopes someone would come forward with new information. The following month, police decided to use the same technology, the one that exonerated Richard Buckland, to catch the killer. They planned to collect the DNA of every man in the region who was born between 1953 and 1970, who had lived and worked in the Narborough area. Each would be receiving a letter requesting them to agree to donate a blood sample. 2 test centres were set up, one at a local school and the other at a council office.
Each man was required to bring identification.
After 8 months, over 5,000 men had given samples, but there was still no match. Among the men who was recorded as given a sample was Colin Pitchfork, a 27-year-old baker and father of 2. Nearly 3 years earlier, he had been questioned on his whereabouts on the evening Linda Mann had been murdered.
Time was running out for the evil monster, still out there, and the net was closing in.